Hey guys, and welcome to my channel Resilient Ratty. My name is Ratik Datta in case you're new here, and this channel talks about my academic, professional, and personal experiences. I have recently finished my master's in marketing program from Purdue University, and I am in the process of looking for a job right now. Just to give a little bit of a background about myself before I dive into what the topic of the video is. And as the topic of the video suggests, I'm going to be talking about my GMAT journey now. And I know that doing the GMAT, taking up the GMAT can be a very daunting task for a lot of people, given the fact that the GMAT is considered to be one of the hardest exams in the world. In fact, as a matter of fact, when I gave my GMAT for the first time back during my undergrad, and I'm going to get into the details of that in a little bit now, when I did it back in my undergrad, I read back then, back in 2018, that it actually had the hardest verbal section in the world out of all competitive exams. And that's truly saying something. So it can be a little daunting to get the GMAT. So I thought of talking about my journey a little bit to help ease the nerves and to give you guys a little bit of a boost in your GMAT preparation. Again, this video is going to be talking more specifically about the GMAT and not the GRE, which is what a lot of other people give. Actually, if people were to tell me now, and if I had to reapply to Purdue or to any of my master's programs, a lot of people have actually recommended me a lot of people would actually recommend me to give the GRE over the GMAT because it's widely considered that for the same amount of effort you put in for both GMAT and GRE, you're able to get a better score on the GRE. But having said that, I had a personal reason for why I wanted to give the GMAT, which I will be talking about further in this video. And I'm very glad that I did, and I'm very glad that I can say that I was someone who was able to get the target score that I was looking for. So the first time I decided to grab GMAT by its horns and give it a shot was back in 2018. So I started with my undergrad in Mithai College from in 2016, and it lasted, and I graduated in the year 2019. So 2018 was when I was in my second year, and I realized that in order to achieve my dream, my ultimate dream of doing an MBA abroad, initially my plan to do an MBA was from abroad, more specifically the US or Canada. And to do that, obviously, I needed to give the GMAT. And if you guys know the prerequisites of an MBA program from the either the US or Canada, you also need work experience. So a lot of people so a lot of people defer giving the GMAT for a later point of time. They don't give the GMAT during their undergrad years, or they prefer to focus on their undergrad education, which is quite understandable. But I just thought that I was in a position where I was actually able to balance both my GMAT preparation and my undergrad preparation, which is why I went ahead and did it. Because for me personally, I'm someone who likes to work on academics in a vacuum and then work professionally in a different vacuum. So basically, mixing academia with professional work was not something that I was very keen on, and hence I decided to give the GMAT during my undergrad itself. Of course, things changed, and I eventually did not end up doing an MBA from the US. I ended up doing an MBA from India itself, and then did a master's from the US. That's a different story altogether. But back then, the plan was my initial plan was to finish up my graduation work, get a few years of work experience under my belt, and then do an MBA from the US or Canada. And I had fully braced myself for this challenge because a lot of my friends had were giving the CA examination. The CA examination is for the uninitiated. It's the Chartered Accountancy exam in India. It's considered to be one of the hardest exams in the world. It has a very pass rate is pretty minuscule in all honesty. And a lot of my friends were giving the CA, and it's something that I had considered myself as well, but then had eventually decided against. And given the magnitude of the GMAT exam, I knew the GMAT was something that I could place on the same pedestal as the CA exam. And for me, this was my chance to prove to my friends that I was also doing something which is academically challenging. Because if I'm being very honest, as challenging as the undergrad program was, it wasn't as challenging as something like a CA exam or a CFA exam is. And the GMAT was truly my first, and the GMAT was truly my way to prove to everyone around me that I am the real deal. Not that I needed to prove it. I personally don't think like that anymore. But back then, that's how my mindset used to be. I was very keen on trying to show my academic excellence to the rest of the world, which is where this whole thing stemmed from. So net result was I started preparing in December 2017 and I gave the exam on the 21st of March 2018. And I remember this date because this was actually the first time more. I'll delve into that in a little bit. So I gave myself about 3 or 4 months to prepare. I joined classes as well. And in my last mock, in the last final mock that I had given, there are different kind of mocks that you can give. My classes had their own mocks as well, but the most authentic and the most accurate score predictor is obviously the official GMAT mock. And the last official GMAT mock that I gave before my final exam, I actually got the score that I was looking for. Back then, I was looking for a score of 700 plus because a lot of the top business schools in the US and Rotman School of Management from Canada required that sort of a GMAT score. I was looking at the top business schools in the US, and hence 700 plus was something which is on the cards. And I did actually manage to achieve that score in my last mock before my final exam. The only caveat here was the fact that I had actually not given it in the best of exam conditions, in the sense that I had also allowed myself to pause the exam on several occasions, which I honestly think hampered the results a little bit, and could be a contributing reason as to why my score was a little higher than it otherwise would have been. But the point was that despite the fact that my quants was not at its best, my verbal was very strong. My verbal game was really strong. I had gotten a great score in verbal. I had gotten, I think, over 95 percentile in the last mock, and I was very confident going into the exam for at least for my verbal. My quant was something which is not I wasn't very sure about, but I felt that my verbal could more than compensate for that. Given that, and then came the exam day. So I was very nervous about the exam day. I was the only that was what was I had told everyone that I was going to give the exam on the 21st of March. So I knew that everyone knew that I was going to give the exam, and I had all that pressure on me. And I had, of course, nobody meant to give me that sort of pressure, but it's just that I kind of took it on myself. I took on the weight of the world to try and prove that I can actually achieve what I've gone on to achieve, what I've set out to achieve. And the net result was I completely faltered on the day of the exam. So I started off with the verbal section and I completely messed it up. I like I just described earlier, my verbal section was the strong point of my GMAT, and I was really relying very heavily on it to get me the score that I was looking for. And because my verbal was terrible, but naturally my quants was also pretty terrible because my confidence was at an all time low. And given this fact, I ended up with a score of just 550, which is actually the minimum GMAT score people usually get when test takers usually get. So I went from a 710 in my last authentic mock to a 550 on the day of the exam. And I knew that this is not what where my level was. It was just a case of me not being able to stay level headed during the exam. It kind of reminded me of, if you guys follow football or soccer, for those of you who are from the US, Lionel Messi was he had the pressure of the world to win an international trophy with Argentina, and he got them to two finals in 2014, the 2014 World Cup final and the 2015 Copa America final. And then in the 2016 Copa America final, which is again he again dragged his team to the final, he missed his penalty. And when I say he missed it, I meant that it wasn't even on target. He hit it right in the crowd, and after that he chose to retire from international football briefly, after which he did return. But I felt like that was my Lionel Messi moment, because up till that point in my life, I don't mean to brag, but just to give things perspective, I had achieved everything that I had set out to achieve in my academic life, and this was the first true setback that I experienced. And given the fact that and you might be wondering, why was it such a big deal? Because the point is that the GMAT one of the benefits of the GMAT is that it can be given multiple times. So why couldn't I just give another GMAT attempt? Because of course the first attempt, I had nerves. By the second time I would have calmed down. But the issue was that I was actually going to start with my internship at Morgan Stanley in a month's time, and I also had my finals coming up for that semester in my undergrad. So I didn't really have the time to re-give the exam, which is again something which was playing on my mind. I had that pressure on me that this was the one attempt that I'm getting. I'm not getting any more attempts, and that also unnecessarily increased sort of pressure that I was in while I was giving the exam as well. So my advice to you is, make sure that you give the GMAT exam when you have some time, in terms of being able to re-give the exam, because it's always very reassuring to know that you have another shot that way you don't have the pressure of the world on you. Some people thrive under pressure. I didn't back then. Now if I had to put myself in the same situation now, I think I would thrive under it. I actually do enjoy it and relish a challenge. So if someone were to tell me that this is my only attempt at the GMAT now, my perspective and my mentality would be very different from what it was back in 2018. But if you are anything like I was back in 2018 and pressure is not something that you like to take, I would personally suggest giving yourself some time to be able to give another attempt of GMAT if necessary. Of course, you don't have to give it. If you get your score in the first time, nothing like it. But just give yourself that luxury and that cushion of time so that in case you're not able to get your target score in the first attempt because of pressure, you can always re give the exam. That is what I decided to do for my second attempt. So my second attempt was in 2022, back when I was I don't remember the date, which is pretty ironical. I remember the date. I remember the date of the exam when I actually didn't get my target score, but I don't remember the date when I actually did. And I think it kind of makes sense poetically in a sense as well, because it's always more because your failures teach you more than what your success does. So I feel like I learned a lot from my setback in 2018, 21st March 2018, rather than the success that I consequently got in August 2022. I had gone for a vacation to the US that year in June, and that is when I had finally made up in my mind. That is when I finally made up in my mind that I definitely want to do a master's from the US. And given that that was on the cards, I knew that GMAT is something that I would have to. Um, I would have to revisit that old friend, and quite honestly, I was looking forward to it. I really wanted to prove to myself that this is something that I am capable of doing, and that was a one off, and that was not going to be a roadblock to all the success that I am yet to achieve in my life. And I decided to grab it by its horns. And again, the preparation time was not ideal because by the time I came back from the US and by the time I had to start writing my essays and start applying to the universities, I didn't have a lot of time, not nearly enough time to prepare for the GMAT. Ideally, I would have liked to give myself 3 months, but I prepared for the GMAT in about a month's time, and I finished about 55% to 60% of the GMAT official guide. And I would highly recommend not doing that. I would definitely recommend you to finish 100% of the official GMAT guide, because that's truly the Bible of GMAT questions. It's gotten the past GMAT questions in it, and I think there's no way going around not finishing 100% of the textbook. I personally didn't have the time, which is why I couldn't do it. But I would definitely highly recommend doing that at the very minimum. Of course, there are a lot of other things that you can do to get an even better score, which I can be covering in a future video. But at the very least, I would highly recommend not doing what I did, which is to not complete the official GMAT guide. And so there was a little bit of pressure on me at that time as well, because I knew that I was not fully prepared. I wasn't nearly as well prepared as I would have liked. But in my official GMAT mocks, I was able to get a score of about 680, 670, 680. And 670, 680 back then was good enough for me, given the fact that I was looking to do a PhD. Yeah, that's another caveat. Initially, before I decided to do a master's, I actually wanted to do a PhD, after which I kind of decided a PhD something that I don't want to do and I actually want to do a master's. So for a PhD program, a score of 670, 680, targeting Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, a few in the UK, a few in the US. 670, 680 was a reasonable score, and given that I had a shorter time frame, I was okay with it. If I had the entirety of the 3 months, I would have definitely targeted a score of 720 plus, because I feel like my experience with the GMAT in the past would actually help boost my prospects of getting an even better score. And then and then of course the D-Day, the day of the final exam. And this time, like I said, my mindset was a lot more different. It was more akin to how Lionel Messi's was in 2022, in the 2022 World Cup final and the 2021 Copa America, because he knew that this is going to be his last shot. And but he didn't let the pressure of the world get to him. He had that calm composure, and he ended up being the best player in both tournaments. And I would like to think that I was able to achieve something of that sort in my own academic journey, and it gave me a great boost of self-esteem, because I was finally able to achieve something that I hadn't. I also remember comparing it to my Thanos moment. If you watched Marvel, And you watched Endgame. The movie starts off with Thanos mercilessly beating Thor. And then at the end of the movie, Thor reminds Thanos that he did tell him that he was going to die for that Thanos was going to die for what he did. And that's how I felt. I felt like if I had to make a meme, it would be Thanos being the GMAT exam and me being Thor and me telling Thanos that, well, I told you, die for that. And that's how I played it in my mind. And it was truly a surreal feeling to achieve what I had set out to achieve, because this was a lifelong dream. I've been wanting to go and study abroad right from high school, actually, even before high school. And of course, there were circumstances because of which I decided I didn't want to do it. Like, because, for example, I initially wanted to do my MBA abroad, but then I decided that I didn't want to because of some personal reasons. But eventually, all roads were eventually leading me to go abroad someday. And the GMAT is a huge obstacle to getting to that destination, so I was extremely proud of myself, especially given that I had time constraint as well. Again, I didn't really, so I gave the one attempt. I got a score of 680, which is a good score even for MBA programs in Europe and Canada. Maybe not for the top MBA programs in the US, but like I said, I was looking to do a PhD, and 680 was a great score for a PhD program in Europe. Of course, after that, I decided that I wanted to do, after I spoke to a few people, I decided to go ahead and do a master's. And the 680 score, and the 680 score was actually good enough to get me admits from universities like Purdue University, which is where I ended up going, and also Northwestern, among other schools. I've spoken about which universities I got into in a previous video. You can go check that out. So, schools in the US, especially, they're very clear that they want to take a very holistic approach in terms of which candidates they end up accepting. So the GMAT score was just one share of the pie when it came to my eventual application. Of course, there was my undergrad score. There was obviously my extracurriculars, my internship experience, and of course, one thing that I think is truly underrated is the academic essays. I think the academic essays make or break your chances of getting into your dream university. More on that later. I can make a video on that some other day. But I was very fortunate to have gotten into some of the top schools in the world. And this is what my GMAT journey looked like. There were a lot of stumbles across the way. Like I said, I gave the exam first in 2018, and I failed miserably. I got a score of 550, which is not a bad score. I'm not saying that it's a bad score, but just considering the target score that I had in mind was 700 plus, and at that point of time, and 550 is the minimum score people usually get on the GMAT. It was a huge setback, and I could have very easily moved over it and just decided that I'm not good enough and given up on the idea of going abroad, but I didn't. And I think that's what the moral of the story is. Something that I really learned from Captain America is to never give up, to be able to do this all day. So even if you have a setback, make sure that you back yourself to overcome that setback, because chances are that you will, with the right kind of work, with the right kind of dedication and passion, you will be able to achieve what you are set out to achieve, even if it's something as daunting as the GMAT. Even if you feel like you don't have the best academic history behind you, in my case, I always had that to look back at, the fact that I had a good academic career so far. But even if you don't, it really doesn't matter. Your past does not define your present, and it most definitely isn't going to decide your future. What is going to decide your future is what you decide to make of the present. And if you treat the present, as the word itself suggests, like a gift, I can assure you that you will get that 720 plus or whatever your dream score is in the GMAT, and it is very much achievable. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. And I would just like to remind you guys that, yeah, I would just like to remind you guys not to give up and to keep at it, and to give yourself some time so that you have time to give multiple attempts at the GMAT. Even if you have an elite mindset where pressure doesn't get to you, I would still suggest that you give yourself at least another attempt to give the GMAT, just to see what score, what just to see what kind of a score you can get in your second attempt. This was just not very small video, because if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I love talking. And given that I'm not giving a college presentation, I like to take the liberty of taking as much time as I'd like. And I really appreciate you guys sticking around right till the end, for those of you who do. and it really makes me feel very warm from the inside that people are actually listening to what I have to say. It's just a little bit of experiences. Life, after all, I feel is nothing but a collection of experiences, and my sprinkles of experiences in different matters. If those experiences can help you guys, if it can help even a single individual, I feel like the job is well done, and that is what the entire purpose of this YouTube channel is. So in case you've given the GMAT, do let me know how your GMAT journey was. Let me know if you have any other questions related to the GMAT. I can make other videos on the GMAT as well. Another video that I had in mind, which I will eventually be making, is how do you decide whether you should be re-giving the GMAT exam or whether you should be satisfied with the score? That is something which is on the cards. It will be coming out at some point in the future. In case you have some other ideas, do throw them around. Of course, like I said, if you are an introvert and you don't feel very comfortable putting out your comments publicly, you can always reach out to me on my Instagram or LinkedIn. Let me know what kind of videos you would like me to make. Not necessarily just on GMAT, just anything about my academic, professional, personal experiences. I've already made a lot of videos on Purdue University. I've also made a video on Athena School of Management. I've also made a video on my recent experience skydiving. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of diversity when it comes to the sort of videos that you see on this channel. But at the end of the day, it's all a collection of the life experiences that I've been fortunate enough to amass over the course of my life, and sharing it is truly one of the best parts of my life. And again, I want to thank you guys for sticking around. We've made it to 50 subscribers. That's half century there. My first target is to get to 100 subscribers, and I think we are on our way to getting there. And I want to thank you guys for backing me and for supporting this channel. In case you're new here and you like my content, please make sure to leave me one of these and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any upcoming content. Switch on bell notifications as well to make sure that you get a notification every time a new video comes out. And of course, yeah, do share it with your family, friends, everyone, because that's what really helps this community grow, and that's going to help me. That's really going to help this channel a lot, and I'll be indebted to you for that. I mean, for whatever that is worth. And yeah, that's about it. I think my GMAT journey is something which is very close to me, something that I use as a reference point. I've used it as a reference point in my communication, in my persuasive communications class as well, because not getting my target score the first time around in the GMAT really messed with my head for a very long time. It gave me, I had a lot of imposter syndrome after that. I felt like I'm not good enough, but it really took a great sense of introspection and a great sense of and the building of an elite mentality to lead me to believe that just because it didn't happen the first time doesn't mean that it won't eventually, doesn't mean that it eventually won't. And it was my Lionel Messi moment, I'm not going to lie. And I believe that a lot of us out here are capable of giving ourselves a Lionel Messi moment. So back yourselves and make sure that yeah, just make sure that you keep doing this all day, because eventually, with the right kind of work, you will get to where you want to be. And I can assure you that. So that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching. I shall see you guys until next time. Trained as well. And again, I did not follow my I did